All right, welcome. I am so grateful to have Greg with me. It's been a long time since we've seen each other person to person, face to face. Feels like, oh gosh, years at this point. How long has it been? When's the last time I saw you?
Yeah, it had to been. I mean, face to face pre-COVID. It seems.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's been a while. So, anyways, I'm grateful for Greg. He's basically the man who's running design outreach, and you might have seen us advertise them on our coffee sleeves or in our social media posts, emails, and whatnot. And we just thought it might be a really good time just to get on and just have Greg explain a little bit about what they do and why they do it, and why we feel passionate to be connected to them during this season, and why it matches with our business model really well. So, Greg, thank you for your time. And I've got 6 questions here, and we'll just go through these questions. And if you have, feel free to share however you want to share it. If you need to ask any clarity, let me know as well. So the first question I have on here is, tell me a little bit about Design Outreach and how you got started. So basically the mission and origin story.
Yeah, and I'd love to. And thanks again for having me on this. We're super excited to be partnered with Coffee Connections, and Design Outreach is really something I started about 15 years ago on a short-term missions trip that I took to Central Asia. And I was working as an engineer at Patel, and I went on this trip, and for the first time in my life, I experienced extreme poverty. I saw it firsthand. And I also saw that a lot of the problems that people are facing could be solved with better solutions, better engineering, better appropriate technology. And so I remember coming back from that trip really excited about what I could do, and I just really felt that God was calling me to use my engineering in a different way, instead of working at Patel, but figuring out how to solve problems for people living in extreme poverty. And so really shortly after that, I connected with a missionary in the Central African Republic, which is a place that not a lot of people have visited, and a place that doesn't get a lot of attention except for when there's the latest coup and a lot of civil unrest there. And this missionary told me about these problems that they were having with water pumps, because I had asked him to share with me what one of the biggest problems were that he was facing as a missionary, and how engineers could help solve that. And so I started learning about water pumps. I learned how water pumps only last for 6 months, maybe 9 months before they need repairs, and how the roads were terrible and they couldn't drive out to fix the pumps, and how the pumps couldn't go deep enough to reach water that was deep underground and could provide water all year. And as an engineer, I thought surely we could solve this problem. We've sent a man to the moon not that long ago. Right. We can surely solve this problem easy. And so that's how Design Outreach started. Of course, it hasn't been easy. It's been very challenging creating appropriate technologies for people in developing countries. Yes. But Design Outreach, we're a Christian humanitarian engineering nonprofit, and that's what we do. We create appropriate technology solutions for people who live in developing countries.
That's awesome. How deep do you have to go to have water year round?
Well, it depends on the location, but in some places it could be hundreds of feet. And in fact, the life pump, which was one of our first creations that we invented, can go to 500 feet. And just to give a little bit of perspective, most hand pumps that are commercially available, readily available, can only go to about 150 to 200 feet. So that means that there's a lot of communities that there's water, but they're told there's no water simply because the pump technology they're using can't lift the water out from that kind of depth.
Interesting. Wow, that's great. So what's your main, I mean, it kind of solved it a little bit about pumps and bringing water sustainability to communities, but what's like the kind of the main focus for the work in ministry? Like you just kind of mentioned a little bit about that technology and the problems that you have to address in different countries based on coups or things like that. What's kind of like that main focus? Like besides is the water, is that what you're bringing? Is it other things to the community? What's really what's the focus there?
Yeah, we really started with water, and we saw this as an opportunity to help create tools for missionaries who are trying to reach the people. And in this case, a lot of missionaries are going into communities, and they see these physical needs that are present, and the missionary wants to help. But if the missionary doesn't have the right tool to help the community, they're not building trust and relationships with that community, and they're unable to really share the love of God with the people. And so we saw the biggest problem in our world, which was something that we could help solve, which was part of the water crisis. But design outreach is really, we create appropriate technology. So we don't just focus just on water pumps, but we work on a variety of different projects. We have a lot of volunteer engineers that work with us, and that's really the bread and butter of how we get our projects done. And we have projects, everything from the water pump to satellite sensors that tell us how much the pump's being used. We have projects where we're working on new latrine systems so that more people can have latrines in their communities. We work in medical device development. We have a partnership with a large hospital in Zimbabwe, for instance, where we're creating medical devices that are suitable for the harsh conditions of rural African life. And so we're really applying a process that we've created that we call the design outreach way of appropriate technology development. And we do it so that we can help solve problems and that we can help our missionaries be more successful in building trust in communities and sharing the gospel.
That's awesome. I love it. I love the creativity and using your skill set to make a difference in people that really don't have the opportunity to do so, which is, I love it. Recently, you made a trip to Africa. What did you do and see there? Kind of talk about the communities before and after type effects. I'm assuming you probably see that a lot when you go into communities, going in before they had maybe a pump or an assistance of some sort of technology that you guys can bring in that they didn't have before you brought in, the differences. Just kind of tell us a little bit about that. What is that?
Yeah, this trip we really kind of snuck in, and there was a window that we could travel. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot of things with international travel, so just getting to Africa was trickier than usual, and usually it's not easy getting to Africa, but we felt that God was calling us and showed us this window to go to visit some of our partners. And so we actually went to 3 countries, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia, and we spent time in each country, and one community that really stands out to me was in Malawi. We actually were part of a couple installations. So we see the pumps go in as part of a training that we do. We call capacity building. So we're always trying to train local technicians and community members on how to install and maintain the pumps over time. And so our teams go in not to just do the installation, but to really help provide training. And we went to one community that I'll probably never forget when the pump was being installed, and I had the privilege of coming right before the pump started actually producing water. So usually installation is a whole process. But the community was this community called Chikwanga Wala, and it was on the road to Zambia. So it's kind of in the western side of Malawi. And this community that we learned about was getting a life pump because the water was too deep for other pumps. And so really it was the only option that they could use in this community. And when I got there was this huge celebration. We pull in, it's just starting to get dark. There were hundreds of people. There was a local pastor who had been preaching. They had a dance group that came. They had a band that came. It was this huge celebration because getting water in a community in the rural areas is like winning the lottery for everybody. This is one of the best things that could ever happen. And then I learned about a story in that community that had just occurred a few days before the pump started going in. It turns out that this community was getting water from a river. And this river was within like a mile or 2 walking distance. And one of our team members actually walked to the river with the community members. And very, very tragically, just a few days before this pump went in, there was a lady who was attacked by a crocodile from the river and was killed. And literally 3 days later, there we are putting in a pump, realizing that this had just happened. They had just had the funeral that morning. And so realizing that this is not just changing people's lives in the sense of it's clean water, but it's safety. Can you imagine sending your kids down to a river where there's known crocodiles and people are getting attacked? And this is happening today. This is not some story that happens somewhere. This is really happening in places where we get to go. And there's another village called Mtenje that we went to that got a life pump, and there was a huge population. There's about 2,000 people that were around this one community, and they were using water out of a river that was very close to where the pump was going in. And this water, it looked orange. It was so dirty, and there were hundreds of kids all over. And this was an extremely poor area, just on the outskirts of Lilongwe, which is a city. And as we're driving in, it's like something out of like a movie where you can't believe your eyes, where you're driving in and there all these kids, they had hammers and they were pounding rocks that they're pulling out of the river to crush them into smaller rocks because people are coming and buying these rocks, the gravel, for construction. And so it looks like a labor camp with these kids, crushing rocks. And we go there, and it was this huge celebration. People were so excited that we're coming because they had a pump, but the pump broke down many years ago and never got fixed and always got vandalized. And so they got word that the life pump was coming, and they were so excited. We had a whole string of people running after our vehicle as we're driving down this super bumpy road. And the pump went in, and it was starting to get dark. It seems like it's always getting dark right when the pump's starting to work. And there was this huge celebration and people singing and dancing. It was out of this world. And just realizing that how much this is really giving hope in a future. These are things that I get to witness firsthand. I'm standing in the middle of these crowds, and it makes it all worth it. Realizing how much work and how much blood, sweat, and tears, and even risk. I mean, to be honest, we were concerned about COVID, but the risk was worth it. These people are probably alive today because of those 2 life pumps.
That's amazing. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So we're going to backtrack a couple of years. How did Design Outreach and us Coffee Connections start? Like, I kind of remember it a little bit with Gateway, meeting Jeff and that sort of thing, but maybe you have a clearer image what took place, because I remember hearing what you guys are doing. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of clean water in Africa and that sort of thing. Different groups that I'm connected with, they do stuff. But what you guys do is just very different, which is what I really enjoy. So kind of dive in and just share with everyone kind of your perspective of how we connected and why we why we stayed connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I love coffee, and so that's a natural connection right there.
That helps.
That helps a lot. It's and the other is coffee is generally grown in developing countries, and so a lot of the countries that we get to work in are coffee producers. Malawi being one, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Guatemala, where we have life pumps going in, even this week. And I remember having this conversation, and I'll have to look back at my notes how the genesis began. But I remember having a sit down meeting in our office, our old office, and just talking about vision and loving the vision of Coffee Connections and wanting to connect with people, wanting to be a community space for the Lord, wanting to use the tips to bless other organizations. And even right on your website, it says our tips are not ours. And I think that abundance mentality is awesome. It's really life-changing for the organizations that benefit, the people that are benefiting from those. And so we thought that this would be a great connection. I remember visiting the couple locations several times and just being really impressed with not only the quality of the coffee, but the quality of the people working there, and getting to meet you guys as the owners, and just finding it a privilege to be connected.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we wanted to do with our tips. Is I never really thought, when we came up with the idea of how our tips can be used for nonprofits to kind of bless people in the community, not just locally, but around the world. I never thought, my brain didn't think of, relationships, that really are ongoing. That wasn't a thought process of mine. I was like, let's meet a need. And to see a benefit that I never would have thought about before is in a longevity type one. You're not done yet. You got so many places you want to take this life pump to. So to be part of that journey is something that I think is a blessing. So, but you guys are doing a campaign, is that correct? And we're going to be designating tips that'll be collected this coming March. So when this thing is recorded, we're in February now, but by the time it goes live, it'll be March. So this month. How will the tips help with that? So what are you hoping for? And I guess another question would be, how much does it actually cost to create to build a life pump? But then I'm assuming there's transport, there's education, there's getting the right people, that sort of thing. What's the cost that's associated with all of that just to get a pump, boom, right there in a spot in Africa?
Yeah. It really is an average cost because it's different everywhere, depending on exactly where you go and how deep it goes. But we raised $10,000 to put in a pump, and that's working specifically in Malawi, where we can manufacture the pump, we can ship it, and it's also building capacity. And that means we're building supply chain. We're teaching people how to maintain the pump, how to install the pump, how to get the parts when they need it, how to get the tools. And so we're building that as part of the system. So it's not just a matter of putting a pump in and walking away. One thing I should mention is the majority of pumps are abandoned after just a couple of years. Something like 40%.
Okay.
40% of hand pumps in the country of Malawi are considered non-functioning.
Huh.
So there's hundreds of thousands of hand pumps installed around the world, and yet something like 30 to 40% worldwide are not functioning. And we really took the approach from day one that we want to be 100% sustainable. In other words, pumps need to be running every day of the year, never have a day without water, because to believe in tomorrow, to have a garden, for instance, means that you have to believe that you're going to have water tomorrow. You know, to keep your kids in school means that. So the funds from the tips are going to go towards producing one of those life pumps and getting those installed and providing training and getting it in a well that's going to transform an entire community.
I love it. That's so good. Last question is, what else can people do if they're interested in learning more about the design outreach? What else can they do? Is there anything else specifically? Like, I'm sure when people watch this, they might want to, they're going to give the tips for Coffee Connections, but they might want to write you guys a check on something separate, like, or maybe they're an engineer and they like this idea, and like, hey, I want to volunteer hours, or hey, I want to be part of something like this. What can people do if they're interested? Where can they go? Where they can find information, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Great question. So the first thing would be going to our website. Just Google Design Outreach and we'll pop up.
There's the logo for those who are interested, making sure you got the right one.
The big DO, Design Outreach, and usually it pops up first thing. So we definitely have opportunities for people to get involved, whether it's as a financial partner, a volunteer, working one of our engineering project teams, or even in the office here. We're based in Gahanna, so we're local and we have lots of needs as we're a rapidly growing organization. Would love to meet you. That's one of the beauties too with Coffee Connections, is just realizing we're local organizations that we can connect face to face. This is not just a video of somebody from some other state or across the country or something. But we really love our community. One of the neat things that we got to do in partnering with you guys is through the Life in Malawi program that we have kicked off. And so Life in Malawi is another way for people to get involved, which we'd love to talk with you about, where it's a program where you can experience virtually what it's like to live in Malawi. And so there's a kit that has ingredients, it has recipe cards, it has activity books for kids that we call the Junior Explorer program, so they can learn all about Malawi. And it's designed as a fundraiser, but it's supposed to be really fun, and it's supposed to be a way to raise money for our Malawi field office. So this is really building a foundation for thousands of life pumps going out into rural communities, and it's something that we're kicking off right now, and it's gotten a lot of traction, a lot of interest, and we'd love for as many people to participate as possible. And the connection is that the coffee and tea is from Coffee Connection. So we have an awesome partnership in just producing this kit together that you'll get to sample some of the great flavors there.
And the Malawi coffee that we had in this past one is, it was a phenomenal coffee. It was very good, tasted wonderful. A lot of our customers that had it for a short amount of time, as I was testing it out and selling it and that sort of thing, they were like, that's one of the best ones they've had. So it's nice to, from a business owner, having you guys being part of our life and stretching us a little bit and finding coffees that we normally wouldn't get, and finding those and roasting it and then trying it just kind of creates it's bringing a different coffee flavor profile, if you will, to people's enjoyment, and then kind of saying, oh yeah, this is from Malawi, or oh, I never heard of that before, like where's that at? So just lots of questions that lead into, well, we're partnered with Design Outreach, and so the relationship is there where when you see Malawi, or you see whatever other coffees we decide to go with and partner with and do, it's going to be a direct connection to you, which I think is an absolute wonderful, and to the organization, I think it's really good to have. So well, thank you for doing the hard work and blessing people. Even though we will, unless we go there personally or see a video or something like that, thank you for loving on people and taking care of the poorest of the poor, and not just providing them drinkable water that's to keep them safe and that's clean and that sort of thing, but then partnering with missionaries to take care of their spiritual life as well. and to lead them to the light. So thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. Any final thoughts or suggestions or recommendations for someone, or just ways we can pray for you guys?
Yeah, no, there's lots of ways to pray, that's for sure. And I just really appreciate your time and just considering supporting local organizations like Design Outreach and Coffee Connections, and just really thinking globally, thinking especially in this COVID world where it's the impact is real and significant in our hometowns, but it's even worse. It's a ton worse in developing countries. And so keep our brothers and sisters in your prayers. Without clean water, you can't wash your hands. And to be honest, one of the big concerns is just the ability to even have soap to wash with, let alone owning a mask. These are things we take for granted in our country here because we have the resources. But in places where there's no resources or extremely small amount of resources, the COVID is just one of those more diseases that's just kind of like stacking against people, and it could be devastating, and it's getting devastating. So, this is the time to really step up and lean in and make a difference. And I just really appreciate you guys, partnering with us again. Another community getting a life pump. This, contributing towards that. It's going to change hundreds of lives. Some of these communities are thousands of people. It's amazing the number of people we can impact with so little money. And so I just really appreciate everything that we get to do together. And it takes all of us. These are not simple problems. If this water crisis, if appropriate technology, if medical devices for developing countries, if it was easy, somebody else would have already done it.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So,
well, thank you. I'm grateful for your heart and your faithfulness, willing to step out and be obedience with that, and just blessing other people. And I'm glad we get to be part of it. I think it's great, and positive is you're on the other side of the city. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not talking to someone in an office in California or whatever. It's like you're right here. So it really speaks to the community spirit and the partnership of, we can go globally from here, and we can do our part to make sure it happens. So Greg, thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, you want to reach out to Design Outreach or whatever, we're going to have links to our social medias and things like that coming up in March. So feel free to do that. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, or Greg himself if you'd like to. Again, just Google search Design Outreach. There's a logo. I literally typed in Design Outreach to pull this logo for a background, and it came up immediately. So you shouldn't have a hard time. If you have any questions you want to give to them, please do. Like you said, $10,000 roughly to do that. So maybe you know people that have money, or maybe, hey, we need to start. Maybe I'm thinking I got my tax refunded and I'm going to start doing some stuff again. I want to give some money away. Design Outreach should be a really good opportunity for you to channel your funds to, because it's literally going to go to real people that really need this. And Greg himself is going to see it actually happen. So, so thank you, Greg. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your faithfulness. And we'll look forward to more partnership and communicate to our customers what more they're doing and how they're impacting the world. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. Take care.
See ya.